to that in the coming years.
Каква акција се очекува од Македонија како земја кандидат за членство во Европската Унија во поглед на климатските промени? Значи, ова климатска акција, постојат ли прописи на ниво на Европската Унија кои што се задолжителни и веќе се очекува да започне ги применува и нашата земја?
Well, as an accession country, of course, Macedonia the country should be preparing itself to the convergence with the EU climate legislation. That's part of the accession process. So that's what we've been discussing today. That's what we will be discussing tomorrow. Beyond that, I would say, I think, and in that perspective, I think the country will need to look into, what is out there in terms of challenges, in terms of opportunities, in terms of needs as well. There are a number of strategies that have been already developed in that connection, and that's really a good start, both on the side of climate as well as on the side of key sectors, like, for instance, the energy sector, which is the bulk of the emissions in this country. So I think that's a very important sector, and I know that action is being taken on renewable energy or energy efficiency, and that's a very good start. I can only encourage the respective ministries to move even beyond that, because it's a start. The Transport Ministry is also looking into that. So in the short term, medium term, of course, we'll need to be a bit more precise and work further together to go beyond the strategy and to look into what is out there, what is possible in terms of a climate target, so to say, and how we decline that into the different pieces of legislation, because in the long run, when the country will become hopefully a member of the EU, then all the legislation that is in place at the moment in the EU will have to be duly implemented in the country as well. So that's a pretty long process. The beauty of the accession process is that it gives us opportunities to work very closely together, to exchange our experience, to also, through a number of tools, like the instrument for pre-accession, which has financial support associated to it, to develop a number of projects whereby you can start preparing for the legislation on the basic tools that you need to put in place the legislation later on. So I think that's what we will be busy working with the various ministries, and that's what we've been discussing today, and again we'll continue tomorrow.
Овие прашања поврзани со животната средина и со климата често се оценуваат како веројатно најтешките прашања за земите кои што одат по овој пат на пристапување. Зошто мислите дека тоа е така? Зошто овие прашања се доживуваат како најтешки во процесот на преговорите?
Well, I'm not entirely sure this is true across the board. We just had the experience of one country, which has this experience of accession, and well, obviously that was a challenge, but nevertheless, irrespective of the fact that indeed it's not the case for climate, but for environment legislation, there is a wide range of pieces of legislation to be taken on board, and that's perhaps where the challenge lies. But I didn't have the impression it was so challenging. I think the main challenge that I see for sure is the challenge of resource on capacity, institutional capacity in the country, which is probably true on the side of climate and environment. And it's also true because these legislation, these matters are pretty technical. So it requires a high level of expertise. And again, that's where we need to work very, very closely because we have this expertise and we need to share it. And we need also, by the way, to share it with other member states who have gone through this accession process and would be very keen to share that experience. But the capacity building issue in the country is indeed an issue. I've heard this morning that there is the prospect in this country to reinforce the team. I think that would be a very, very good news because that will be needed if we want to develop the project first and then get deeper into the technicalities. That is really, really crucial. I think what is also crucial is a proper sort of coordination system, because you know, the challenge with climate change is that you can have a special team devoted to that, but you also need to work very, very closely with the transport people, the energy people, the economic ministry people across the board, agriculture, of course. So you need climate expertise spread out and really good cooperation.
Во последниот извештај на Европската комисија за напредокот на Македонија во делот за климатска акција и климатски промени, Европската комисија забележува дека потребно е значително зголемување на јавната свест во земјата за овие прашања поврзани со климатската акција. На што го темелите, на што Европската комисија всушност го темели ваквиот заклучок? Дали постојат одредени истражувања кои што сугерираат дека македонците не се доволно свесни за ефектите од климатските промени?
Well, the fact is that I think this probably came from the realization that in this country, but it's also the case in many others, climate change is not necessarily yet given the the top priority, because it's also a question of awareness from the citizens. There is always more efforts to be done in that direction in order to have everybody on board, in order for everybody also to take the necessary action, because we all of us as citizens, we need to take action, local authorities as well, regional authorities, and so on and so forth. And there was this perception that the public awareness across the board was not yet there. This is not a problem in itself. It's quite common. I think it's growing very quickly, to be frank, because people see that the climate is changing and they see the impact. So I think this is a matter of years, a couple of years, but I think this is there, and this is there to grow. So we're not concerned about that. But it's true that, I mean, compared to other parts of Europe where it's a bit everywhere. It's also integrated in education very, very early. This is not yet the case, but it will come, exactly.
Македонија, веројатно како и другите земји кои што се на пат кон Европската унија од овој регион, не може да се пофали со големо ниво на инвестиции во изминатите години од аспект на климатска акција и заштита на животната средина. Веројатно тоа е една од причините заради која што регионот заостанува по овие прашања во однос на Европа. Сега во моменти кога на располагање стојат средствата од ИПА фондовите, колку сметате дека тие фондови се искористени во вистинска мера за подобрување на ситуацијата поврзана со климатските промени?
I think the country is not yet using them, but I mean there is this perspective that it can and it will, and that's what we need to work on. I think the funds are there. There are a number of projects, within reach. The envelope and the priority given to environment and climate is there. So I think we need to reap the benefit of that and work together to develop credible projects. That's also the sense of the message that we passed today, that we cannot miss the opportunities that are out there. again, it's coming back to the capacity issue. Of course, developing a project in itself requires capacity, requires expertise, and that's what is urgently needed to be in a position to put in place such a project, and for the project to be eligible and to get granted at the end of the day. But I'm confident that if there is the political will to do so, I think altogether we can work and not miss the opportunity, because it would be really a pity.
Уште едно прашање, за земја како Македонија секогаш е битен економскиот раст, затоа што се обидуваме на некој начин да надокнадиме и да ги стигнеме европските земји од аспект на економскиот раст. Како може од една страна да се зборува за климатска акција, заштита на животната средина, а од друга страна за економски раст? Дали постои нешто како дали навистина постои нешто како зелена индустрија или зелен економски развој?
Well, yeah, that's a question we all have, and I have to say, yes, we're convinced that economic growth is not incompatible with ambitious environmental protection and climate action, for sure. When you look at what happened in Europe, we've managed to reduce our emissions quite drastically in the last 10 years, while at the same time continuing and pursuing economic growth. So that means that you can decouple the two, and the two are not mutually exclusive. You can really have the two. And I would say that even now, even at a time where we have a severe economic crisis, taking ambitious climate action together with ambitious energy policies, and that's again very much valid here, because I think there is here, for instance, just to take an example, a great potential in terms of energy efficiency. When you look at the cost savings, when you look at the energy savings, the fact that you reduce your dependency on oil and gas imports, which at the end of the day are very, very costly, I think it helps to tackle the crisis. It's a solution to the crisis. Not to mention the green growth I mentioned, you know, all the sectors producing, exporting low carbon technologies, low carbon services. It's part of the solution to the crisis as well. It creates jobs, and creating jobs is key these days. So I think that's the other angle we need to look at. But all in all, yes, it is compatible, and yes, it is a solution to the crisis.